I/O operations. Anything that we do with a computer, we typically want to input something into a computer. Okay. Have it processed and then output it. And therefore, when we write our programs, we want our programs to be able to input data. We want data to be able to be inputted into our program so that we can then output it, so it's meaningful to someone. The very first thing that we're going to talk about is #include IO stream. IO stream is a preprocessor directive. Remember we talked about that earlier? Preprocessor directive in IO stream allows us to have predefined functions that someone else written for us that we can now access. In IO stream, there are two data types that have been created for us. Along with the data types that have been created for us, there are two variable declarations. Remember doing that? Data type and then the name of the data type. So here's our variable declaration. Instead of using int, now we're using iStream and cin and cout. The very first cin variable declaration is what's also known as an input stream variable. The second one, cout, is what's known as an output stream variable. Cin stands for common input. Cout stands for common output. Here we have cin variable. Remember, this is our input stream variable. This is the extraction operator. And this, for now, is going to be simply a simple data type, like int, char, if you recall, double. The extraction operator is a binary operator, meaning it takes two operands. The operand to the left is the input stream variable. The operand to the right is the variable. So here is the left. This is our input stream variable, cin, and to the right of it is a regular variable with a simple data type of to the right of our extractor operator. So here are our two operands, cin and variable. Note when you are using the cin input stream variable that when you enter in data, white spaces are skipped. White spaces are skipped. That includes blank spaces, tabs, so let's look at an example. Here we've got #include IO stream. This is again our preprocessor directive that allows us to use the input and output stream variables cin and cout using namespace standard int main Here in this scenario, Harry must have at least a C in the Defense Against the Dark Arts by midterm in order to play Quidditch. He has 3 exams so far. Enter in 3 grades and determine his average. So we declared H1, HP2, HP3, and Harry as doubles. C out, enter in Harry's numbers. CN are common inputs, our input stream variable that we have access to because we use the directive, preprocessor directive IOStream, HP1, HP2, and HP3. Then it calculates it here with this expression. C out, Harry's midterm average in Defense Against the Arts is Harry. And then you remember system pause and return 0. Let's go ahead and run this. So enter in Harry's numbers. Let's say he gets a 70 space 80 space 90. Enter. Okay, in this case, Harry's midterm average is an 80. CN and functions. When we're using the input stream variable CN with functions that have already been written for us, we have advantages. Sometimes the example that we just showed works a little bit differently, and we'll get into that. Let's look at a couple of functions here. cn.get varchar. With cn.get varchar, what happens here is that sometimes before, when we entered in our data, what was it, like 70, 80, 90, remember C++ is going to skip white spaces. That's how it knew it was 70 and 80 and not 7080. If for some reason you want to include that white space, you can use cn.get to input the very next character next to the data that was inputted. We can use cnignore int x chexp. When we use cn.ignore, the function ignore allows you to discard a portion of the input. So if we wanted to, we could ignore 90. Make a note here as we're doing this using CN and functions. What's going on here is that we're using what's known as dot notation. Here's the dot, which is also known as a member access operator. CN is our stream variable. Ignore is our function. Int x and chx, these are our arguments. Also known as our parameters. Sometimes you can get what's known as a failed state. A failed state. A failed state is when there is an error in reading the information from data input and data type in other words. If there's a difference in the data that we inputted compared to what we defined was the data type, then we're going to get what's known as a mismatch. If that happens, the input stream enters into what's known as a failed state. where all further statements, further input-output statements using that stream are ignored. And to note, the program still continues, but it does so with incorrect results. So in other words, C++ isn't going to kick you back something telling you that you have a failed state. You're going to come out with the incorrect data, and you have to find it and correct it when you're testing your program, obviously. There are some functions that you'll have to use here. The first is clear. The clear function restores the input stream. The next one is ignore. The ignore function helps to ignore the rest of the input. So here we have I/O operations with functions, pound include I/O stream using namespace standard, and here we have an if statement. Don't worry about this for now, but what this allowed us to do is create a scenario where we can use cn in one of the functions. So if Harry doesn't make it to at least 70, because remember he wants to play Quidditch, Harry needs magic and your help. Enter in his failing grades again. Chant expecto patronum return 100. Press return, enter in 100, and press return. So here we have cn HP1 HP2. This time we're going to ignore after HP2 100 \n. What the 100 is it's the maximum number of characters to be ignored in the line. In other words, when we enter in our data, we're going to ignore the next 100 characters, or until we encounter a new line. And then we're going to enter in cn HP3. And then Harry's going to be HP1, HP2, HP3 divided by 3 is going to be Harry's new average. See out Harry's new midterm average in Defense Against the Dark Art is Harry. Let's go ahead and run this. So let's just say Harry gets a 60, a 60, and a 60. Alright, so therefore Harry's midterm average in Defense Against the Dark Arts is 60. Therefore Harry needs magic and your help. Enter in his failing grades again. So let's do that first. 60, 60, 60. Chant expecto patronum return 100. Then press return. Enter in 100 and press return again. Harry's new midterm average in Defense Against the Dark Arts is 73.33333. Okay, so what happened here was we entered in 3 60s. See out, remember we asked for those 3 60s, but however this time HP1 is taken in, so the 60 goes into HP1, 60 goes into HP2. However, the third 60 is ignored. 100 characters is ignored. And then when you pressed enter again and typed in 100, that 100 then went into HP3. And thus, HP3 is now 100, and Harry's new midterm average is 73.3333.